Section 3 of the Daredevil of the Army. Experiences as a buzzer and dispatch rider, by Austin Patrick Corcoran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2. The author assists at a victory and abandons his bike for better things. Part 1. We have beaten them on the Marne. We have beaten them on the Aisne. We have fraternised with them at Christmas during a 24-hour truce, and found them human in the matter of souvenirs. Their officers have assured us that we have not a chance in 1,000, quite politely, of course, but with absolute conviction. By March we're to be flying with the first eastern winds. Well, we've kept them sitting all winter in their trenches waist deep in French and Flanders mud. Meantime, of course, we've been sitting in it ourselves, with occasional relief in the shape of a run to London. The Motorcycle Despatch Corps, having earned the particular praise of Field Marshal Sir John French, is unusually lucky in the matter of these reliefs. Besides, fresh men have been coming out in droves, a fact which, combined with the general quiet along the line, makes it comparatively easy for the old men to get leave of absence. I get 7 days home. Lord, how they loved us in those days in London. Private cars meet us at the Charing Cross station. Pretty girls hurl flowers at our heads. Crowds of cheering, excited men and women block our autos and impede our egress from the station. But we don't mind. We sit in the tonneaus, grinning amiably, a little embarrassed, if the truth must be told, by this somewhat novel role of returned hero. Not that we dislike it, you know. Far from that, but we don't feel ourselves big enough for the shoes. At the end of the 7 days, so crowded that they fly by on wings, I go back and find strange changes on the line. It is now shortly after Christmas. The cavalry, of no use in this stationary warfare, has been dismounted, much to its chagrin. Now its members are squatting in the mud, along with the hitherto despised infantry. Lord, what a fall was there! Our section which, you remember, had been attached to the 2nd Cavalry Corps, has been split up and scattered along the line. I lose my friend Grant. We were assigned to different units, but at least he is within calling distance whenever there is time to call. I am with a brigade attached to the 4th Corps, and Grant an adjoining one 2 miles away. But things are not what they were. Excitement has given place to ennui. Each day is like another, endlessly boring with its uneventful routine. War has degenerated into a dull, drab affair, an unromantic contest, mainly with the elements, the element of mud putting up the best fight. And so we come through the winter, a disgruntled, disagreeable crowd, lazy too, and inclined to cavil at all orders. If they won't let us fight, then why the devil can't we go home? That is, in general, our attitude of mind. Comes a rumour shortly at which we all sit up. The Russians are doing great things these days. It is now well into the spring. One of our trench oracles opines that we are going to help them. There is vague talk of a push, a poke in the ribs, so to speak, which will remind old Fritz that we are still alive and keep his attention from wandering too exclusively to the east. The blighter must not get the habit of feeling at home in France or Flanders. Immediately such a change is noticeable along the line as must have gladdened the heart of the High Command. Our step is surer, our heads a little higher, and we work with a new and eager will. After all, sitting in mud is no incitement to deeds of daring. The mere thought of a move bucks us up. For 3 days now we have been preparing for the event. Not that the powers that be have deigned to take us into their confidence. They are far too aloof for that. But they can't hide the evidences all round. Morning, noon and night we are riding with our messages, all of them marked priority, which means that they admit of no delay. And all along the roads leading to and from Neuve Chapelle there is unceasing motion, endless processions that block our paths and impede our progress. Ammunition trains, convoys, Army Service Corps wagons, they are all moving up, carrying supplies for men and guns. In our efforts to pass them, we occasionally find ourselves lying in the ditch as a result of overestimating the width of the French roads. And Lord, what weather we are having! The heavens, disapproving of our preparations, do their best to hinder them and harm us. They simply open and let the water pour down on our heads. We slip and slither all over the roads, and our wrists ache with the effort of keeping our machines erect, but somehow we manage in spite of it all. Never in the early dark days before the Marne have we been as busy as we are now. All through the night of March the 9th and the following morning I carried despatch after despatch to an artillery commander, an Army Service Corps officer, a battalion commander, over and over again. When finally day dawns and hell breaks loose, it is to find me with 20 hours sleep in arrears. About 7 o'clock, or a little earlier, the thunder is loosed. The guns, which for days have kept up a constant crackle, now burst into a deafening roar. As I scurry along the roads, shells whir over my head. Thank heaven I am not at the busy end of their range. 7:30 the curtain lifts, then is lowered farther back, a signal that the infantry has gone over. I am detailed to take a message to the 21st Brigade, one of the first to advance in the fight. There is electricity in the air to day, the electricity of excitement. It quivers along my spine, it stings my fagged brain. My mind is clear with the horrible clarity that is often the result of lack of sleep. I spin along and am suddenly made aware of the fact that not all the shells are coming from our side. Not 20 yards in front of me I see a great Bertha burst. Plop! It goes, square in the middle of the road. I have plenty of time to stop and plenty of room to swerve. My hands make a motion as if to turn the handlebars, but my eyes are riveted to that hole in the road. A grim fountain is playing there, spewing up sprays of mud, clay, smoke, stones and pieces of shell. They fascinate me. "Turn your bike," says my brain, but my eyes are glued to the spot. Like the lady driver who is so anxious for the safety of a lamp post, I can't leave that crater out of my sight. Presently I am conscious that we are meeting. Head first I go into it, but I land on top of my bike. "Of all the blamed fools!" I say angrily to myself. "One would think you never saw a shell burst before." I pick up my machine. It is unhurt. I climb out, furious with myself and quite unable to explain the phenomenon. Why should any sensible man ride straight into a hole? I mount again. It must have been half an hour later that I noticed a certain awkwardness in one of the fingers of my left hand. I had broken or sprained it in the crash. I get back to my section and hear the glad news. We're advancing. The reinforcements are going up. Everything is working like a clock. But the Boches are by no means beaten. Off again on a message. The berthers are still busy. One falls in a field adjoining the road on which I ride. Another whirs over my head with a scream like an eagle's. Along the way I come on evidences of their work. Here is a horse's trunk from which the head and legs have been severed. There a man's corpse almost cut in two. But I am not at all shaken by such sights. What's the matter with me? I should be terrified by all the rules of this game. I remember legends of brave men who not only felt but confessed their fears. Where is the panic that the novelists promise me? Why should I be losing all the thrills? Here am I skimming swiftly over a shell-ridden road. Cheeks ruddy that should be ashen. Hand steady that should be shaking. Vision clear that should be clouded. Brain functioning that should be fuddled. Is my calm an abnormal calm? A calm keyed to a higher pitch perhaps than that with which we conduct our daily affairs? Or is it a callous calm, bred of familiarity with horrors too often seen? Is nature so adjustable that she can become contemptuous even of death itself? You may be killed by the next corner, I tell myself earnestly, but my knees refuse to quake. And then I come to the next corner, and suddenly my equanimity is lost. For there by the roadside I see a rider lying on his face, a broken bike by his side. There is something familiar about that recumbent form. I dismount, turn it over, and recognise my friend Grant. So the rotters have got him. Grant of the grey Scotch eyes, the best chum man ever had. Got him and disfigured him. Half his face is bashed in. My calm deserts me on the spot. Now I know why a brother joins to avenge a brother, and a father to take toll for a son. Why am I not in the trenches with a bayonet in my hand? I despise myself now for a mere messenger. Good old Grant! And I must leave him who would never leave me, lying dead by the roadside to be picked up, another casualty, like the 1,000 others whom I myself have passed so callously at times. The chances of war! How many times I have said the words, offered them with a shrug of the shoulder as consolation on the death of a friend. A new pity, a deeper sympathy sweeps over me as I mount reluctantly. They had never taken a friend of mine before. Oddly enough, it's never occurred to me that they might soon take me. It is afternoon now. The dim sun is going down. I am sent on a double message that takes me through the town. First I am to report to the Lahore Division, whose signal office, I am told, is in a cellar, next to the 25th Brigade. Poor Neuve Chapelle! Already its homes are in ruins. Hardly a stone is standing on a stone. Instead, they are lying all over the streets. I have to zigzag to get through. After much meandering and many inquiries, I meet only Indians on my way, and their English is as fluent as my Hindustani. I spot the blue and white flag that marks the signal service. I deliver my despatch and start off again. I have been told that the brigade is trying to force the passage of a bridge somewhere to the north west of the Bois de Biez. I find them facing a fury of machine gun fire, and depart glad to be alive. But my mind is still busy with its memories of Grant. I forget myself, my machine, my surroundings. I ride along mechanically. I must unconsciously have been riding slowly when I am suddenly hailed by a shout. I look round and see the grizzled head of an old soldier stuck out of a half-ruined house. "Move a bit faster," he cries. "Faster, mate, unless you want to click." Hardly are the words out of his mouth when he drops with a moan. I turn my head almost involuntarily to see whence the shot came. Ping! A few sparks fly out of my handlebars. On the spot my investigation ceases, and my chance friend is forgotten in concern of myself. Jamming my throttle wide open, I sprint for home, sending my speed up to some 60 miles an hour. But I'm not quick enough. With a jerk my foot is lifted from the footrest as if by an invisible hand. My map case, which had been lying flat on my back, switches round and strikes me in the face. Next there comes a sharp rap on my knee, as if someone had hit me with a stick. I wobble frightfully, but don't lose my equilibrium. Neither do I relax my speed. At a record rate I regain the signal office, dismount, and flop on the ground. My leg seems as if suddenly paralysed, and I notice a patch of blood adorning my pants. So a sniper has got me at last. There is no pain, strangely enough, only a burning sensation. Again my natural curiosity asserts itself. I look at my foot and find that my boot is minus its heel. So that accounts for the sudden jerk off the footrest. But why should they have caught me on the left side when the shot came from the right? This puzzles me extremely, but there is only one explanation. The bullet could not possibly have passed through the little space that the make of my machine leaves round the engine. Consequently, it must have hit the ground underneath and ricocheted up to my foot. But even at that it must have made some extraordinary curves. Another aimed at my back must have hit my map case and flipped it round in my face. But what about my knee? Were they then firing from both sides? Impossible. I would have noticed that. But there is no one with whom to discuss the phenomena. Someone is already busily bundling me into an ambulance which takes me to the casualty clearing station. Being a light case, I am sent next day to a base hospital. The casualty clearing station, for all the horrible suggestion of its name, proved to be a place of exceeding beauty, a French chateau evidently belonging to people of wealth. As they lifted me out of the ambulance, I had a glimpse of smooth lawns and trees of magnificent stateliness. It took but a few minutes to get me on an operating table. Only war could have brought it to such uses. In times of peace, clicking balls would have had my place. I could see the billiard cues still standing along the wall. Then, as they ripped off my trousers and loosed the bandages, I had my first sensation of pain. Began a search then for an elusive bullet which proved to be conspicuous by its absence. To help me through the ordeal I was given a glass of milk and soda. Only its colour told me its identity. I seemed to have lost my sense of taste. "Oh, you'll be all right in a few days, sonny," the surgeon assured me. He was a splendid looking man with a mane of white hair. "Just a flesh wound. They missed your kneecap by about 2 millimetres." He thought he was consoling me, but alas, poor man, he was sounding the knell of my hopes. My eyes had been turned towards home. So they took me to bed, a saddened patient who had seen heaven and tasted its joys in anticipation, only to have the cup dashed from his lips. Instead I got a meal, consisting of broth, toast and an orange. That failed to interest me, for I had suddenly realised that for 36 hours I had had no sleep. I needed no rocking that night. Next morning I was awakened all too soon. The hour was barely 6:30. I opened my eyes to behold an orderly standing amiably near my bed, bearing a basin of water. How that good-natured fellow irritated me with his officiousness. He would insist on washing me, and I would wash myself. I won out, and immediately justified his zeal by upsetting the water all over the bed. But at any rate, I had not been treated like a baby. While waiting for the ambulance train to take me back of the line, I had my first good look at my fellow sufferers. Including myself, there were 8 slight cases. But the others, God, that any man should look like them! Disfigured is scarcely the word to apply to them. Grotesque gargoyles, that was how they seemed to me. On the train I was placed in a compartment with a man who had been a member of the Black Watch. One of his legs had been shot off. His face had been skinned, Lord knows how, and he had lost his right cheek. And he suffered. Oh, how he suffered! The train bumped and rattled the whole of the way, as only French trains can. It bothered me, who was scarcely hurt at all. Now, it would wring a groan from that poor remnant of a man. Now a curse, now a cry. At 3 that afternoon he died en route. We stopped while they took away his corpse. His going left me sick and nauseated, and lonely, oh, so lonely. I think I would have cried with homesickness if a trained nurse had not chanced to come by. She stayed with me for the greater part of the journey. What would soldiers do without these women? But how did they stand the sights that I had seen to day? Stand them night, noon and morning, as a war nurse must? I'm afraid my courage would fail me as such a test of human endurance. Toward evening we reached Le Trapore, a beautiful hospital situated on the French coast. Its base is a cliff some 2,000 feet over the sea. They told me it had been a summer hotel, and a German still owned it. Now resident in Switzerland, he was getting 400 francs a day for its use by the British Government. A perfect army of nurses, doctors and orderlies met us. They were ranged in the big, broad hall. Then, with a neatness and efficiency nothing short of miraculous, they dispatched us to our different sections. Surgical cases here, medical cases there. How could they distinguish us so quickly? By 10 o'clock we were in our wards, small rooms of 4 beds each. We were put to bed, given hot milk, and soothed to sleep. Could it be only yesterday that I was listening to the roar of guns? Was it possible that France still held such retreats as this? Yet, I suppose, we were not more than 60 miles from the actual firing line. More comfortable than I had ever hoped to be outside of my home, I fall asleep, too lazy even to look around. I wake up again to be confronted by a smiling, familiar face. I rub my eyes, blink, provoke a boyish laugh. Who is it? None other than young Harrison. There is a bandage round his head, concealing a scalp wound received a few days since in the fighting round La Bassée. But how had he got to La Bassée? We had given him up for dead or captive on the night when he failed to return to our farm signal office from his mission to Landrecies. Oh yes, he has a story to tell. Here it is, as he told it to me. As you remember, he and Hudson had separated at a crossroads. As you remember, too, there were Ullans about. Not for him the luck of Poole, who had shot his way through. A bullet in his back tyre decided that. The first I knew of it, he says, was a skid of my rear wheel. The ground seemed to rise up and hit me in the face, and then glide away again from under me. When I recovered my senses, I saw 2 Boches standing over me. Thank the Lord, I had the wit to stick my finger in my mouth and swallow the Despatch whole. Then ensued a colloquy between the two, not a word of which Harrison could understand. We really ought to know their beastly language, he declares. Finally one turned to him, went systematically through his pockets, and then motioned him to walk on ahead. For almost an hour he trudged along the dusty highway, the Ullans on their horses bringing up the rear. He was hot, heartsick and aching from his fall, but what bothered him was the question of where these fellows were taking him. He scanned the road for landmarks that might indicate his position, but none met his eye. They seemed to be cutting across country, skirting villages, but still within easy distance of the fighting. For the boom of the big guns seemed to be growing louder instead of less, and he could hear the rattle of exploding shrapnel. It must have been midnight, he says, when we came up in the rear of an infantry battalion, which from the look of things was setting out on the march. As they approached, one of the escorts threw himself off his saddle and walked towards the officer in charge. There ensued another colloquy, equally indistinguishable to Harrison. Then End of section 3